we're going to talk about VFX tigers scanning of Las Vegas into 3D. This is so cool. There's so many cool things. We're going to talk about practical blood to CG blood and all the awesomeness in Army of the Dead.
Hey everyone, welcome back to AsArt with Nick and John. We post a lot of different kind of content on this channel, from deepfakes to visual effects breakdowns to shot-by-shot analysis, just kind of reviews. So check out AsArt.space for all the audio and video links to all the different type of content we do here.
By the way, guys, we covered Army of the Dead. We have a cool alien theory video. We did a breakdown talking about the acting and all the cool stuff. And now we're going to talk about the aliens. No, now we're going to talk about the VFX, all the way from the helicopter, the comedian that they placed in. It's just so cool, to the tiger, and oh my gosh. But first, we're going to start off with the scanning of Las Vegas. John, how cool was that?
It was really, really cool stuff. And you're starting to see the technology even in consumer level equipment, but obviously not to that high quality. But LiDAR is a scanning technique that you can get really the most detailed scans. And they basically did that for huge sections of the city. And I think they were mixing a lot of other techniques as well. They had this drone flying around the city for days on end, just capturing all these images. And I hadn't heard of the camera, but it's called Phase One is the company. And the camera they were using, if it's the same one I was looking up, it has 151 megapixels. So it has really high-end optics, but also it's capturing these gigantic images. And if you're using things like photogrammetry, whereas you take photos from all different angles and you feed it this program, it's able to figure out this point is the same point in this picture, and you're basically able to make 3D models. And in some cases, very detailed 3D models of just regular images, but they were combining all these together. You have the LiDAR, which is almost like sonar, it's bouncing back and things like that. And they're combining this with photogrammetry. It just looks amazing. But it's funny, certain scenes that they showed, screenshots, it looked like Google Maps, 3D. It's like the lower quality, but then they use that as a reference. And I think probably handmade higher detail or mix it in with the LiDAR stuff. Really cool stuff.
And then they had to destroy it too. Think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was really cool too in the video. They were talking about like how they had to destroy the city, but they had to leave up certain things so you're still in Vegas. Like you still had like the Statue of Liberty, the MGM, like those iconic landmarks you still need so you can place yourself still. So it was really cool finding the balance.
And it definitely, there was a lot of people involved that they even showed on there as far as the head people, but then you think of all the artists that were working on that for a long time. But it's cool. It just started off with discussions and what do we need? How beat up do we want this to be? It's just a really, really cool thing because, man, the budget, I think, was 90 million. We talked about in another video for this, for the amount of effects and work that all that LiDAR, just the equipment itself and capturing all that stuff and processing, that's a lot of work. And so it's what they did for the budget they had is pretty awesome.
But the results show.
Yes, for sure.
And it also helps with the stylized blur.
Well, but there's nothing really that looks out of place in this movie. Usually you get a few shots in a movie where you're like, oh, that looks a little bit less lower quality, but nothing really here that I ever thought that looks out of place.
Great job to the VFX team and supervisors, everyone. Great job.
And just the planning for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Planning is such a huge part of it.
All right, so a comment we got on our Cruella Disney Plus movie review. The actual video that we posted itself is Cruella CGI Dogs VFX Reaction Analysis. We have a comment from Cora November that says it was definitely jarring throughout the movie. The CG was extremely obvious in many of the shots. If the dog was still, it became harder to tell, but when there was motion, the CG started to leap out. And you know what, for me, it seemed like it was a shot-by-shot basis. Some shots looked a little bit funky, whereas other ones looked great. And
you can tell, like, the idea of using really dogs was a good idea, but then when you have to match the dog from the previous frame where the hair and the fur and the lighting has to be the same, that's where you're going to run into issues. Flip-flop, and your eye's going to see it, flipping back and forth. You're probably going to notice it probably more than if it was just a real dog the whole time, or if it was just a CG dog the whole time. And we break it down in the video. Go check it out. But you know what? A great transition would be talking about tigers now. Gosh, there's a friggin' zombie tiger, dude. And who would have thought that they went to Carol Baskin from the Tiger King? Anyways, great job. The references and just the muscle and talking about the fur. I mean, gosh,
it was an extremely well done, basically, character in the movie. I mean, it definitely it was a supporting character, really. And it's funny, we don't see animals like that
Zombie
all the time.
tigers.
Obviously, they had to go a long way to get that reference, but it was one of the more convincing animals in a movie that I've seen in a long time. And I love the break. This is a part of, visual effects that I don't have hardly any knowledge at all, is when you're doing a model, especially a quadruped, and you have all the underlying muscles. So it moves underneath the skin and flexes. I love those breakdowns when you see that stuff. And you could tell all the work that went into that.
And all the different render passes, too.
Yeah, man.
So sick.
But it was just cool how they had real still shots and footage of this tiger, and then they would mock it up. And like, well, how decayed do we want this to be? We still want it to be intimidating, so we do want it to have some muscle mass. We want it to be bloody, but we want it to be matted blood. And you can tell there was a lot of thought that went into before they ever started modeling or simulating anything, which is really, that's what I think I liked about this more than anything, is it shows you the entire thoughtful process from beginning to final completed shot.
And how important that is.
Oh, yeah.
A big thing with the VFX industry is when directors change their mind.
Yeah.
And they want to redo it or whatever. It's so good to know what you want ahead of time. And it was so good. This VFX supervisor really worked well with Snyder. It looks like, because it looked like they were on the same page with a lot of stuff. And that's what you want. You don't want a life of pie situation. And then like it does turn out beautiful because the artists are super talented and they get the jobs done. But then because of all the changes and stuff like that, it really kills the industry. So thank you for making it work beautifully, like everything working beautiful, because it was such an enjoyable movie to watch. It really was. And like seeing the breakdown of like the stunt guy pulling the actor around and the tiger going in,
that was really,
and like
really cool.
fighting the head, and you see the AO pass and all the other beautiful renders and passes, and it's just
the wire work. And the guy I was talking about, he definitely got beat up being pulled around by those wires, but it really a lot of times, like I think of the prequel trilogy where Anakin's supposed to be riding on this fake, kind of horse, and it looks so bad. And it's obviously that's a long time ago, but one of the notoriously hard things to do is to have creature riding on a creature, or having a creature. Like I remember Peter Jackson's King Kong. It looks really weird as well when the brontosauruses are running around. It's like, it's hard to,
dude, even in Lord of the Rings, when Legolas hops on the horse.
Yes.
Yeah. He does like the weird thing. Like it's tough.
It's hard to do that stuff, but you can tell that even with, it's $90 million is a lot of money, but for how much effects work is in this film, you can tell they really planned it out extremely carefully. It shows for sure.
Yeah. And let's talk about how good the practical stuff is.
Yeah.
Because, like you can do everything CG and have CG zombies and shoot randomly in the air and, put everything in post. But it's so good to have the makeup and the actors there on set. And that's what's so cool about the zombie movie is this is all like practical makeup. So yes, they added CG for the blood splats and when they get sawed in half. Obviously you need that, but it's so good to have something physical there to work with.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the helicopter pilot, right?
Yes.
So they added all of her scenes in, but you also see a guy in a green suit standing next to her for reference. You know what I mean? Which is what she needs, right? She can't just like, yo, get the gasoline, put it over there. You know, you got to have some kind of reference. So, but even if a guy's in a green man suit, green man, I love it. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. But it helps with reference. And gosh, they did such a good job with comping her in. Oh my gosh, it looks so good.
All of the stuff I've read about this movie and podcasts that I listened to, they've covered this recently. No one knew, unless they knew going in, that she was comped in later on. And there were some very complex shots that she was in. And like they have this Avengers type shot where they're rotating around all the people. It's kind of like that dream sequence, but it's that Avengers hero shot. And she was comped in there. And it's just crazy to think about because they didn't know they were going to have to replace the original actor.
No.
And so they had to track the shot for 3D match moves. So when you want to put in 3D background stuff, you have to figure out how the physical real camera was moving. And unless they had some high-end camera setup where it fed the 3D motion data as the real camera was moving, which I'd imagine they probably do have on sets now, they had to figure that out in software. And then you would have to program a motion control camera, which is a camera that can repeat the same camera move over and over in a repeated fashion. It's basically a computer controlled camera. And they would have to shoot her in the exact same camera move, exact same lens and then comp her in. And the crazy thing is it really did look flawless. And like Nick said, the reference of having a person in like a green gimp suit there, or when she was looking at the model, they put a little mock-up of the model so she could touch the little helicopter on the top. But there was some shots that were very static, so not as hard to do. But some of the shots were very much moving, where it's a very complex solution.
Very cool. And even like the robot head, like the zombie robot head was so cool, and how it's like a robotic. You have some guys with remote controls, controlling the facial things, and everything in this movie just came together so well. And I'm happy that Zack Snyder, director, co-producer, co-writer, director of photography, it's his vision. Like, I can't think of anything more than a Zack Snyder movie when it comes to this movie. Like, it's so Zack Snyder, like it should be, with vision and stylized and all that stuff.
And it's fun too, because they really pulled every trick out of the visual effects and special effects book. And that makes it more of a conversation piece. You do get movies that are all, I don't want to say digital because there's a lot of stuff, but Avatar was a great example of, people talked about it a lot because it was really first huge smash 3D movie. And
the Hobbit movies too.
Yeah, but I mean, Avatar was a thing where it was kind of mostly 3D. But whereas here, I think a lot of people are having fun talking about all the different approaches they did for shot by shot basis. Obviously, we're a little bit more into this because we're doing content for it and things like that. But a lot of people that I've been reading online really liked the different approaches they took. And that's the best way to do it. This reminds me a lot of Lord of the Rings or things like that.
Here we go again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great example because of all the behind the scenes content we have for those movies. But the hybrid approaches are always the really fun ones. And this just has a lot of fun. It's just fun, gory zombie stuff, which is really, really cool.
So much fun. I mean, unbelievably amounts of fun.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about those shots where they had to put her in is they didn't show the original actor there. They just showed her not against the background and then putting her in. But the step that they didn't show was you have to take out the original actor or actress and then insert her in. On the static shots where she's just standing off on a side, not that big of a deal. But this crazy rotation shot, I'm assuming the original actor was there. And that's extremely difficult because in a 3D moving world where you get parallax shifting, which is, things that are further away tend to appear like they're moving less based on like perspective shifting. To take that person out of that shot and then create a clean plate for that is extremely difficult. Now, granted, you are putting another person back in that same general area, but still, there's never a complete cover up. And it was a male actor originally.
Difference. Exactly. There's probably so many different things that go into that.
Yeah.
But if you guys are interested in VFX, John has a channel called John A How To, and he talks about removing through After Effects and Nuke and other programs like that too. So if you are interested in learning how to remove people out of scenes and movies and create a clean play and putting yourself in and stuff, he does awesome content on his channel. Yeah,
it's definitely not Army of the Dead complexity, 3D matching and things like that. But at least if you want to know how to do it in the software, but doing a little bit step-by-step more, where we're talking just about the overall result here, that's a little bit more of the step-by-step process. But this is just such a fun, this is just such a fun movie. The only knock I can say against this movie is there's so many special effects and visual effects happening almost at any given time that you don't really get to appreciate them as much as you probably should, based on all the hours of work that went into it. But that's not the point. The point isn't to stop and say, look at how cool that looks. It's just to get across the story, which
it also shows how good of a job they're doing.
Yes.
It's keeping you in the story. Because whenever it takes you out of the story, then they're not doing your job. If it's always like, oh, that looks too fake, or that's not believable. But if it works in that world, I think helped with a lot of the VFX though in this movie, the blur. Intense hyper focus. Yeah, the depth of focus with which you're able to blur a lot of stuff out probably helped a lot with the VFX. And maybe that's why it looks so good, because it wasn't like clean and crisp like we're getting all the time now, right? Because you got like your 4K, super clean, crisp. You can see everything. It was nice to have the blur. It's like giving you an old film, not old film, but like that cool stylized classic film look.
One of my favorite film grades for a movie is The Book of Eli with Denzel Washington. And they basically 90% desaturated all the shots and gave it kind of a green tint and things like that. But it worked perfectly for the context. This is not quite that extreme, but it is kind of post-apocalyptic. You have this diseased, dead feel. And, it really goes in what's the context of the film and what feels appropriate for this universe. And not seeing everything perfectly crisp and beautiful is what you really wanted for this. So I'm glad that they were able to lock down that look. And I'm curious, a lot of time colorist is the last, giving a final look to the film is much later on in the process. And sometimes it's incorporated in the compositing and things like that, but I'm curious to see how far along the line they had that look nailed down versus begin to line the color grading process. But really, you're exactly right though. That grungy look
probably
helps it a lot. Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to ask the audience here, you guys maybe comment down below. I didn't think about this until right now. Was this a Netflix from the start funded film, or did Netflix purchase it and distribute it on there? Because, Netflix has bought movies in the past, like The Interview, the James Franco, Seth Rogen film that was, not going to be released in theaters, but then Netflix bought it up and released it solely on there. I'm curious if this is something they acquired to show on here, or if this was something they budgeted from the start. Because from what I understand, Netflix doesn't always offer the biggest budgets. And so I wonder if they had to work within constraints of that, or if it was already done before then. So I'd be curious if any of you guys know that, to comment down below. All right, guys. So let us know what you thought about the special effects and visual effects. We'll try and link in the in the description down below the links to the visual effects breakdowns we watched. They're really wonderful, really, really cool stuff. Thank you, Netflix, for actually providing those to the community.
Thank you. Yeah.
Check out AsArt.space for all the audio and video links. Let us know what you thought about the film, if you thought the visual effects and special effects, how they stacked up to other movies that are similar in style. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next AsArt.